Now, chapter 13 does overlap back over top of this. And if you go to chapter 13, verse 1, and I'm done with chapter 12. I might go back and hit a couple points, but I think I'm just going to leave it where it is. And it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having upon his head 10 crowns, and upon the heads the name of blasphemy." Or 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. Now at this point, those 10 horns, okay, they now have crowns upon their heads because they have actually been crowned, because this is the Antichrist kingdom here that's being born. Now, I know it says "and," but it's not a succession of events, okay? Usually you'd say "and" means that, but if you go back to the Old Testament, there are plenty of instances in where a chapter starts with the word "and" it's actually overlapped back over top of the previous chapter to provide more context in a different way. So why would God do that in this circumstance? I believe that in chapter 12, verse 13, this is the point at which the man who will become the Antichrist becomes the Antichrist. So that's an extremely important event. So when we go to chapter 13, verse 1, it goes back to chapter 12, verse 13, and it starts rehashing that portion of it where the man who becomes the Antichrist actually becomes the Antichrist. That's why it's overlapped. It's just that little bit, and it goes back into chapter 12, or chapter 13, goes up to the war with the saints. Well, that's the point at which it stops overlapping. And now you have the rest of the portion of chapter 13 is unique unto itself. And it's no longer overlapped on chapter 12. So just those last 5 verses, 13 through 17, is it actually overlapped, because it actually talks about the same things. And if you go and read into chapter 13, and I'm not going to read it all for you right now, but it uses the same language. It talks about him opening his mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. He's trying to convince the world to believe on him. Hello, it's the same thing that was happening in chapter 12. That's why it helps us that they believe, and that God has placed a strong delusion on them that they believe a lie, because they're believing this guy's crap, and they're going in and worshiping him, separating the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, so that the saved and the unsaved, not yet blotted out, will be alone together. And that is an extremely important time, because I believe just in that short space, there's going to be the most voluminous amount of salvations in the history of mankind. And I think it's going to be even more than during the period in which Christ was on the earth and the apostles were out there, because this is going to be extremely potent, and there is way more people. So it's not about how much work they did. It's about how many more laborers there are going to be, and how many more people it is that are going to be here to receive the gospel. And I believe at this point God is going to be opening the eyes of these people very readily. And I think